Sports have a problem, and it's real fucked up right now. Good morning, welcome back to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time. I value mine, you should value yours. Let's get into it. Sports has a major issue right now. Sports just aren't fun. Sports just aren't entertaining. And understand where I'm coming from when I have not recorded consistent a sports podcast that I love, I value, I cherish, have put so much time into for the last 5+ years. And I haven't recorded consistently in a month. Not because of being lazy, not because of not enough time, but because sports just aren't fun right now. Think about this. Unless your team specifically is doing well, you do not enjoy the sports that you claim to love. I'm not talking about Celtics and Warriors fans. Your teams are in the finals. Congratulations. You're probably having a ball. In the NFL, if you're a Rams fan, you probably love it. In baseball, well, I don't know who loves baseball anymore. I thought I loved baseball. I don't know anymore. Let's break down each of the individual leagues and talk about why they're struggling and why sports are in the shit show dumpster fire that they've been in. Let's start with the NBA. It's currently the NBA Finals. This should be a wonderful time for the sport. Some of the most lively. This should be like one of its biggest weeks of the year. Like this, the draft, opening day. Like, these should be some of the biggest times of the year. Think about this. We just had a Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics and Heat. This is with Jimmy Butler coming off a 40+ point performance in Game 6. And Jimmy played his ass off in Game 7, and all props to him, and props to the Celtics for winning the game. And what was the coverage beforehand? You guys know my gripe with sports media. You know my issue with it. Game 6, or Game 7, is on ESPN. ESPN has the coverage before the game, and guess what? Stephen A. Smith is talking about what is to expect from LeBron James for the rest of his career. LeBron James doesn't play in the Eastern Conference. LeBron James wasn't in the playoffs. LeBron James is nowhere to be around this subject. And yet all sports media can do is go, shit, we need to fill in a block. Let's talk about LeBron. That is a piss poor excuse of a job, and Stephen A. can do better. ESPN can do better. That's a joke. Let's talk about, you guys know my gripes with coverage. I could go on all day. I could talk about Skip and Shannon, every other segment being a LeBron or Cowboy segment. And then they defend it by going, well, look at our ratings. Well, you're a popularized network. You have funneled media of sports pretty much between ESPN, FS1, you're the two giants. This is Walmart, Target, this is Amazon, you're the biggest producer of this medium outlet. Of course you got numbers. And then just because you talk about a certain thing, of course it's going to show, oh, well, people like when we talk about it. You don't give the other topics a chance. And there's no one who's smaller than you that is yet to be able to break into that circle. Like, think of how well someone like Pat McAfee is doing. But even Pat can't do the numbers, as great as his show is. Love his show. Shout out to him. He can't do numbers ESPN and FS1 does. Because they're the giants. They're the biggest guys in the room. They have the most money. That's how it goes. So that's the first big issue with the NBA, and really all three of them. But first big issue, the way that we are covering sports and the way that ESPN and FS1 are covering these sports makes it almost insufferable to watch if you care about them at all. Then let's talk about the product. You can say what you want about the NBA. And I love the NBA, I love basketball, but the games have just outright sucked. The most memorable games, not even being biased, the most memorable series of the playoffs. Pelicans Suns, you had back and forth, you had winning on each other's home court, you had close games, you had guys hustling, making a name for themselves, and Alvarado, Herb Jones, you had Chris Paul as a legacy guy, Devin Booker was an MVP candidate, you had all these different things, DeAndre Ayton, you had all these different things going into this series. It was fun, it was exciting, it was close. What's the other good series? Name it. What's the other good series? Because all the other series, Warriors, Grizzlies, the Warriors are down by 50 at a point in that series, and Ja goes out with injury. Celtics Nets in the first rounds, that should have been a great series. That's a sweep. Where is the good series? Phoenix Dallas in the second round, multiple blowouts. Yeah, Luka played great, but just because one guy plays great does not make a great series. The Mavs are blown out. The Suns, we saw Game 7. There has been so many games, and this is the thing, when you play a playoff series, especially a playoff series, after about 3 or 4 games and you figure out what the other team's trying to do, it's not supposed to be that easy. These games should not be 20, 30, 40-point games. Greg Popovich complained about this several years ago. And while I know we like to say when it's an older guy or someone who's been around and they're complaining about something, it's like, oh, look, it's the old man yelling at clouds me. But Greg Popovich, several years ago, as this trend started happening, he's like, look, it used to be in an NBA game, you could look at a box score. Who had more rebounds, who had more assists, who had more steals, defense, field goal percentage. Now you look at a game, who had more threes? More threes, you win the game, boom. And there's teams that, because the Warriors have this style of they can shoot 30, 40 threes a game. Well, of course they can. They have maybe the 2 greatest shooters ever. And when they had Durant, they had maybe 3 of the greatest 5 or 6 shooters ever. Of course they can shoot 30, 40 threes. You got a team like Philly. James Harden, Joel Embiid. Embiid might be the most dominant big man in the league. Most likely is, in terms of just pure dominance. And he's shooting threes. James Harden, I just saw the stat yesterday. He can make his next 825 3-point attempts without a miss. 825 threes without a miss, and he would not be as efficient as Steph Curry. Like, the games are distorted. It means by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, some teams made 23s, the other teams made 6 or 7 threes, and it's a blowout. The games aren't good. The style of play, well, yes, it has opened up the door for you no longer just have to be the tallest guy in the room to get on the team. It's not a centers run league anymore or a big guys run league, and there's positives about that. But this idea that the NBA should be a bunch of who can make 23s first, and that's how you settle the game. We're about to watch the finals, and I'm going to just guarantee, and I hate to do this because I love the NBA. I love basketball. There's going to be 3 or 4 blowouts. I'm not even going to tell you who wins. But it's going to be 3 or 4 blowouts in this finals. Because one day, the Warriors are going to make 25 threes. The next game, the Celtics can make 23s. And you're going to have a 30-point, 25-point game. That's not good for the sport. That's not good for basketball. If it's your team, fine. You'll love it. But like I said, that Pelican Sun series, there was defense. There was guys hustling. There was... the offensive rebounds were huge as a defining factor in that series. The rest of them, it's like, fuck it, chuck up threes. Guys don't even, and I'm going to get into this more tomorrow, guys don't even believe in playing within a system anymore. There's a reason why I think Mike, Kobe, Bron, 3 greatest ever. And I'm not here to argue with you. Mike and Kobe played in a system. And I believe that's an advantage to what LeBron's had to deal with. If Kobe and Mike had to do it like LeBron did, which is no system, or you are the system, we're only going to go as far as you go, their resumes look way different. And vice versa, if LeBron got to play in a system. Joke all you want on the triangle, but there was an offensive system, there was a scheme, there was a game plan. Look how good the Warriors look at times, because they have a system. Steve Kerr is a coach, has some of that Popovich influence where it's move the ball, pass, cut. These are things that you learn at a very young age. This is AAU 20 years ago. It's no longer AAU. This is AAU 20 years ago. Pass, screen, move around. There was a system. Luka's great. Half of Luka's possessions are dribble a couple times, fade away 3, or drive by my guy, try to grab a foul. That's not a good product on the court. So the NBA, we got an issue with the style of play, the product of the games, and of course, the way we're covered. The NBA, not in a good space right now. Now let's talk about Major League Baseball. And this is the worst of the 3. The NBA's in the middle. And baseball's the worst of the three right now. And this hurts to say. Analytics, I think, help a lot in life. The more information we know, the smarter we are, the better we should be in any facet of life, and just the better we should be as people. We went from walking to riding horses to cars. As technology improves, we should be getting better. And as someone who's been a fan of Tampa Bay, and I credit Tampa Bay as being the best organization, arguably in sports, considering what they have to do with that payroll, that situation, that stadium, everything that's going against them. They are the poor kid who grew up with no parents, foster care, nothing going right for him. And they've made multiple World Series and have put out the most consistent good product for any team that is even in that bottom third, let alone bottom 3 or 4 payrolls in baseball. Consistently. Their farm system, excellent. Their major league team, above average to really good. A couple down years in the middle, but primarily since 2008, when they've had this run, the most consistent product on a baseball field. That's not just funneled with a bunch of money. But analytics have shit all over baseball. And it's in hitting and here's where I give baseball players the difference, right? Hitting a 95 plus mile an hour rock is incredibly hard. It is incredibly hard. It is, if not the hardest thing to do in sports, it's right up there. So with the analytics in baseball, where these guys can know, all right, the way these hitters swing, they hit it 50% of the time over there, 70% of the time over there. They hit it, 60% of the time over there. So we can just change our defense and we can have 2 outfielders in this play because we need the 5th infielder. Or we just slide everyone over to the right. I hate to say it, but that's got to go away. Because as innovative as it is, and as much as it has carried a franchise like Tampa Bay, now when other clubs who have money, who have resources, who have the assets to copy that, these are things that you see with the Dodgers, the Astros, some of the better teams in baseball, guys start hitting 220. Guy that was hitting 270 could hit a 270 to 280 hitter who could be 40, 50 home runs. An MVP candidate goes down to 220. Because with baseball, mentality is a huge thing. So now, guys are going up there, and instead of hitting 260, 270, we're at least, okay, that's 1 every 2 games, 1 to 2 hits every 1 or 2 games. Like, you're staying there, you're getting on base, you're getting a walk here and there. You feel like you're in the flow of the game. You're not going on these drastic slumps. You're energized, you're engaged, you're involved. Now they start doing shifts. You hit into the shift 10 games in a row. You're batting 220 and going down. Am I even good enough to be a Major League Baseball player? Pitching. You gotta do something with the mound. Either move the mound farther back, lower it, do something. And before any of the purists come at me and say, well, this is the way it's always been. No, that's not true. The mound's been moved several times and it's been altered. Before you say, well, why are you just giving the hitters a cop-out? The rules for things should not stay the same forever. There's a Thomas Jefferson quote where he said the Constitution should be changed every 20 to 30 years to help reflect the new generation. When the mound was at a certain point, I think Bob Gibson in the 85 was the last time it was moved, or 75. Getting my years mixed up there. It was moved because guys started throwing 92, 93 miles an hour, and that was fast. Now you have Aroldis Chapman who throws 100. You have multiple relievers. Aroldis Chapman's a great example. Aroldis Chapman broke in, and his crazy thing was he could throw over 100 consistently. And that was like, whoa, what are you going to do with that? Now there's several relievers. The Dodgers have a bullpen full of guys who have 4 or 5 guys who are throwing 95 to 100 miles an hour. You got starters throwing 95 to 100 miles an hour 6 innings in. So the mound needs to be moved. First and foremost, the mound needs to be moved. Get over it. It needs to be moved. It is killing the game. It makes it less interesting. You can go to a baseball game. There's 6 or 7, 8 hits collectively between both teams. Couple runs scored. And the people that are at a baseball game are there, and I've been to games with a lot of these kind of people. They're there more just to be out. They're not there to watch the Dodgers and Padres, two of the most talented teams in baseball. They're there because it's San Diego. They want to go downtown. They want to have a couple drinks with some friends. The product is suffering, and as great as analytics I think was, and analytics can still be, you got to get rid of. We've already made moves towards it, right? Like just a couple years ago, relievers should come in. I could pitch to 3 guys in an inning with 3 different pitchers. Can't do that no more. Got to make at least three batters. We need to keep making moves like that for baseball, because the product's not good enough anymore. Product's not good. It needs to be fixed, needs to be changed, needs to be edited, helped. You got to learn to tweak it. Baseball is a game that has relied on its history, and right now, relying on its history is screwing its future. It needs to be better, and you can make it better. You can fix this, because baseball, comparatively, everybody talks about the NBA is more skilled and better than it's ever been. NFL, more quarterbacks, better than it's ever been. Well, those two things, they're better, and they are, but part of their better is because of rule changes. Baseball is more talented than it's ever been. And it's, if you go pound for pound, player for player, it's probably the most talented sport, is the most talented athletes in the world playing that sport. Baseball has more talent than the NFL comparatively, has more talent than the NBA comparatively. And they just keep screwing it up. Just keep screwing up. It needs to tweak, move its rules before a sport that used to be number 1 in America is now number 4 in certain states and in a large part of the country. It's literally called America's pastime. And it's losing out to hockey. Fix yourself, baseball. NFL, do better. And when I say do better, I'm talking about do better with your executive, your office, your management, and admin positions. Your product on the field, spectacular. Because even teams that have crappy records, the Lions, they play hard, they got some talent. Like, the NFL probably does the best in terms of tweaking its rules, changing things here and there to make the game a better product on the field, and your product is better than it's ever been. But you know what's not? Your admin positions, your executive positions, your front office positions. Do you realize that if you have to have something called the Rooney Rule, and then you have to reinforce the Rooney Rule with, hey, please make sure you guys are following it, because they're starting to notice that we don't actually hire anybody that don't look like us. And then now the Rooney Rule just got expanded to where coordinators or QB coaches are included with it. The NBA has 15 black head coaches. The NBA is a primarily black league. The majority of the players are black. There's a lot of great international players. There's some great white players, but the majority of the league is black, and it's starting to reflect that now in its coaching. There's several GMs, front office positions, and yet the NFL does not. NFL, do better. And last but not least, we got to throw on here sportscasters, sports media. Do better, you guys. You don't have to say every time you go on television, Kendrick Perkins, this is the greatest in NBA history. This is the biggest in NBA history. This is the... You don't. Not everything needs to be a hot take. Not everything needs to be LeBron James focused. Not everything needs to be, I gotta say this as loud and be this over-the-top personality. That's not how people enjoy sports. That's not how people want to hear other people talk about sports. If I go to listen to a radio show or a sportscaster on ESPN, and I think Stuart Scott is the best to ever do it, rest in peace, I want to feel like you can do one of 3 things for me. You either A, gotta be funny while you do it. Like, you don't have to be this over-the-top personality, but you gotta have some personality. Not a forced personality, Be authentic. If you're not the over the top guy, don't act like the over the top guy. 2, I gotta feel like you know what you're talking about. You can't just go on there and say, this guy is a great shooter and he's shooting 25%. You can't go on there and just say whatever you want because you feel like you've seen other people get away with it. Or go on there and talk about whatever. You gotta understand and be able to articulate in a way that is digestible for regular people. Because that's who watches your shows. That's who your audience is. And 3, and this kind of works with both. I want to walk away and feel like I'm smarter. I want you to be able to just kind of throw in these 1 or 2 things to make me feel like I know more about the sport that you're telling me about. I loved being able to turn on Baseball Tonight, the old ESPN show. Maybe it's still on, I don't know. I don't really watch the network very much anymore. The old Baseball Tonight show. And I could learn something about baseball. As well as get my daily recaps for the day. Understand where the season's going. See who's winning, who's on a winning streak, who's on a losing streak. The best shows, the best show in sports is inside the NBA. Because they're authentic. You know they know what they're talking about. And there's things you can learn. And I know everybody's on this big kick of hiring the former athlete because they have these inside info. Not all former athletes are meant to be analysts. Just don't work that way. Because I'm going to show you 2 examples before we log off here for the video. I'll show you 2 examples of guys who are one's really good, one's really bad, and they were both sitting at a desk 2 weeks ago now, I want to say. Patrick Beverley, JJ Redick. Patrick Beverley went on there, and I don't think Patrick Beverley's an idiot. I'm not here to say I don't know him, obviously. Probably a smart guy. He's had a good career in the NBA, has made some money, and he got an opportunity to go join ESPN to do a couple shows on First Take. And he looked at it and said, well, I know how they all act on First Take. I'm going to go on there and do the exact same thing. I'm going to say some crazy shit about Chris Paul. I'm going to put on a personality that's probably not me. And I'm going to go on there and do what everybody else does because I know this is how they get their money. This is how they get their bag. And then you got guys like JJ Redick who go on there and have been on there several times where JJ is himself. He's authentic. He's got a personality. He's got a great podcast. He's used to doing this. He is knowledgeable about the sport. Not only him from playing, but he's being able to discuss other players. And you can learn something from him. His perspective, when he talks about the way he looked for a shot, the way he moved off the ball, things he's looking for in the defense. Another 2 guys who are great at this is Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. All the smoke. They're great because they have these little insight things where they're like, yeah, when a guy was playing me left and I knew I had to do that, sometimes you go fake a screen, then you back cut. Like these little things that they can throw in there. That's great when former players can do that. But then when you got guys who are just turning into personalities, they're just going on to say whatever. Like, it's not good. And it's not good for sport. It's not good for sports. It's not good for sports media. I got nothing left to say, you guys. I've been sad. That's why I haven't been recording. Sports have been in an awful place. And I just hope one day we get to the light at the end of the tunnel. Because this shit is killing me right now. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is HardFoul. I will see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you. I'm out.